the static from the radio gnawed at my nerves. I hated this oppressive silence, the way it seemed to seep into my bones and make me question every creak of the tower. My thoughts drifted back to John, who usually had a knack for cutting through the noise. Today, though, there was just nothing. I sat in the lookout tower, watching the dust motes dance in the narrow beams of sunlight that filtered through the small windows. I remember that morning when I decided to take my old pickup truck down the gravel road leading towards Forest Park. Each bump sent shudders through the vehicle as I navigated around rocks and roots, kicking up clouds of dust that hung in the air like memories of better days. The familiar scent of pine needles mixed with damp earth filled my lungs, a comfort I had cherished over countless trips to this remote spot. But now, it felt unsettling, as if nature herself was trying to warn me. As I parked near the entrance, Michael's voice crackled over the radio, laced with skepticism. "Hey, Emily, still trying to reach Miller?" The doubt in his tone was palpable, and I sighed deeply. Why couldn't I shake this feeling? I had promised myself that I wouldn't let him down again. This silence was making my gut clench with a freaky premonition. With determination coursing through me, I climbed back into the truck and turned on the ignition once more. The engine sputtered to life with a groan, echoing my own frustrations. I drove deeper into the forest, each mile amplifying my sense of dread as I scanned for any sign of life, or lack thereof. I pulled into a clearing surrounded by towering evergreens and got out, feeling that familiar crunch of twigs beneath my boots as I stepped onto the forest floor. The air hung heavy with tension, an unusual calm enveloped everything around me. My heart raced as I moved forward cautiously, scanning every shadow cast by the trees. In that moment of stillness, an eerie sensation washed over me, a creeping awareness that something wasn't right. A chill ran down my spine as branches rustled nearby. My instincts kicked in and propelled me towards a cluster of trees where a flicker of movement caught my eye. I approached slowly but deliberately until I could see what lay ahead, strange markings etched into bark, symbols or scratches that looked deliberate and ominous. My gut twisted painfully as paranoia seeped into every crevice of my thoughts. Who had been here? Watching me? The possibility clawed at my mind like a wild animal eager to escape its cage. What is this? I whispered aloud to no one in particular. The words barely escaped my lips before another crackle interrupted me from behind, the radio. It jolted me back to reality like a splash of cold water. "Emily! Are you there?" It was Greg's voice, relieved yet urgent, and it tugged at my frantic heartstrings. "I'm here," I replied quickly, gripping the radio tightly in anticipation. "I've been trying to reach you for hours," he said breathlessly. "There's been a report about hikers missing near your area." My pulse quickened at his words, fear wrapped around me like a vice grip squeezing tighter with each second he spoke. Missing hikers? The implication sent shockwaves through me. Yes. 3 people vanished without a trace, he continued urgently. You need to be on high alert. I looked around at the towering trees casting long shadows across my path and felt an overwhelming sense of vulnerability settle deep within me. I don't know how much longer I can stay up here, I admitted shakily. Just hold tight, Greg urged firmly through the static-laden connection that felt both comforting and isolating at once. Help is on its way. As soon as we ended our conversation, an ominous silence enveloped me again, a void filled only by distant whispers from unseen corners of the forest around me. Taking one last look at those disturbing markings carved into nature's canvas, dread bubbled up inside me anew as realization struck. These markings might not be just random carvings after all, they could be warnings meant for someone like me who wandered too far from safety. Each step back toward my truck became heavier than before. Every rustle in the underbrush seemed amplified by fear pulsating through my veins like an electric current threatening to overwhelm me entirely. In desperate haste, I unlocked my truck door and jumped inside while glancing nervously over my shoulder, half expecting someone or something lurking just out of sight, but found nothing except shadows playing tricks on my mind. With shaking hands gripping tightly onto steering wheel once more, I took off down that winding gravel road leading back toward familiarity and safety, only wishing for clarity amidst confusion brewing within those dense woods surrounding me like an unyielding prison meant only for those lost souls who failed to heed its warnings. My heart thudded against its cage as adrenaline surged through every part of me. I wasn't just racing against time now but also against whatever darkness lurked in those trees behind me. The static from the radio crackled again, a sound so familiar yet laden with unease. I swore I heard my name, distorted, twisted through the airwaves in a way that sent shivers down my spine. My heart raced as I instinctively pressed my ear closer to the receiver, desperate to decipher the garbled message. The hairs on my arm stood up like sentinels on alert, and my hand hovered over the radio's transmit button, feeling like a trigger I was afraid to pull. "This is Emily, Tower 4, you copy?" I asked, each word barely steady as it left my lips. The silence that followed felt weighty, almost suffocating. Static answered me, mocking in its emptiness. The cold coffee in my thermos tasted bitter against the backdrop of anxiety tightening in my chest. It was a really creepy feeling that made me question whether I was truly alone in this wilderness. I glanced around the room, half expecting someone, or something, to emerge from the shadows. The walls seemed to close in on me as paranoia wormed its way into my thoughts. No way, this was just a dead battery. There was something more lurking beneath the surface of this eerie silence. I needed to see that tower myself. With resolve surging through me, I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, creating a haunting dance of light and darkness. Each step toward my truck felt monumental, as if I were crossing some invisible threshold into unknown territory. Climbing inside, I grasped the steering wheel tightly and turned the key with a jolt of determination. As I drove down the gravel road towards Greg's lookout station, each bump jolted my thoughts further into disarray. What had happened? Why hadn't anyone checked in? My mind raced through possibilities. Had there been an accident? A fire? The weight of uncertainty bore down on me like an anchor, dragging me into murky depths. The forest enveloped me with its towering trees casting flickering shadows over the dirt path ahead. My fingers gripped the wheel tighter as trepidation gnawed at me relentlessly. Every rustle of leaves or snapping twig heightened my senses, fear wrapped around me like fog creeping through dawn. I turned a corner and saw it, the lookout tower ahead, dilapidated and silent under the fading light. My breath caught in my throat as dread washed over me anew. Something felt deeply wrong about this place now. This wasn't just an abandoned structure, it was a vessel for unanswered questions and potential danger lurking within. Parking at an angle that allowed for quick escape if necessary, I stepped out and approached cautiously, each footfall echoing unnaturally loud against the hushed backdrop of nature's breathing. The air felt charged as if it were alive with electricity tinged by fear, a sensation that set off alarms deep within me. The base of the tower appeared intact but overgrown with weeds and vines clawing upward as if trying to reclaim what belonged to nature. A sudden movement caught my eye, a flash of color against muted browns and greens, and I squinted to see better. A piece of fabric snagged on one of the wooden beams at eye level. I reached out tentatively to touch it, my fingers brushed against rough fabric, and then recoiled sharply at what lay before me, blood smeared across weathered wood beneath where it hung like a warning sign left behind by someone who had once sought refuge here. What happened here? I whispered aloud, though no one answered back but for echoes swallowed by shadows surrounding me. The radio buzzed again with static, a brief interruption in this growing nightmare, and startled by its suddenness, I stumbled backward before regaining composure to grasp it tightly once more. Greg! Are you there? Anxiety laced every syllable that slipped from my lips. No response came immediately, only more unsettling crackles broke through what felt like an ever-thickening haze surrounding everything, including myself, here. I paced back and forth near the base of the tower while waiting for an answer, my mind racing with all kinds of scenarios. Greg might have already reached his limit too, or he could be dealing with something worse than mere silence, like danger closing in fast. Finally, after what felt like ages filled with tension thick enough to slice through flesh, came his voice, "Emily. You okay?" Relief surged through me momentarily before panic surged again at how he sounded so distant despite being only miles away. Did he know more than he let on? No. It's not okay. You need to get here now. My voice trembled with urgency, desperation seeped into every word as they echoed back eerily off nearby trees. What's going on? He pressed further, but before answering him fully, I caught sight of movement once more, figures moving stealthily among trees along the clearing leading toward where our lookouts stood apart from one another. My heart pounded violently against my ribs as adrenaline surged through every fiber of my being. I took several steps back instinctively while still keeping Greg engaged on radio without losing focus entirely on those shapes growing clearer now under dimming light. "Greg," I managed finally between shallow breaths brimming with fear-filled urgency, "there are people here, they're not park rangers. Stay where you are." His warning was sharp enough to cut through rising panic, but it didn't reach far enough past fraying nerves threatening to unravel completely under mounting pressure encircling us both like wolves prowling toward prey without mercy. The gravity of impending danger settled heavily upon me as realization hit hard. Isolation wasn't merely psychological anymore, it had morphed into something tangible lurking right beyond sight's edge waiting patiently for its moment to strike. I stepped toward the base of the lookout tower, every fiber of my being on high alert. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum, each beat echoing the uncertainty that clawed at me. As I reached the damp earth, I noticed something odd, a series of faint, elongated prints stretching across the ground near the tower's base. They definitely weren't made by hiking boots, they looked stretched. I crouched down, my hands trembling as I tried to decipher the bizarre impressions left in the moist soil. "What on earth?" I murmured, feeling a chill creep up my spine as I traced the outline of one of the toeless prints with my finger. The sensation was unsettling, sending shivers down my arms. It felt like an intrusion into a realm that should have remained untouched. My mind raced with possibilities, each more chilling than the last. "Michael, I'm telling you, this isn't right," I spoke into my radio, urgency filling my voice as I stood upright again. "John's radio is gone, and there are freaky things out here." A heavy sigh crackled through the speaker before Michael responded, his skepticism evident even over the static. "Emily, you're probably just overreacting. It's been a long couple of days," he started. "No," I interrupted, unwilling to let his dismissive tone take hold of me. "You don't understand. Something is wrong." My breath quickened as adrenaline surged through me, every instinct screamed for me to leave this place behind, yet an equally potent force compelled me to uncover what was happening here. Suddenly, a thick fog rolled in from deeper within the forest. It enveloped everything around me in an opaque shroud, obscuring the path I had just walked and making this isolation feel even more pronounced, like stepping into a horror movie where shadows whispered secrets best left undiscovered. The air grew heavy with tension, it pressed against my chest like an invisible weight. I glanced back at the tower behind me, its silhouette now ghostly and distorted through the fog. My resolve wavered momentarily as doubt gnawed at my mind. Was this some kind of trap? But then I remembered John, the promise I made to him to watch over his station while he was away. My moral debt anchored me firmly to this spot. Turning back wasn't an option until I uncovered whatever truth lay hidden among these trees. I took a deep breath and stepped cautiously forward once more. Each footfall felt like an act of defiance against whatever dark presence lurked just beyond sight. The dense mist swirled around my ankles as if attempting to pull me back into its depths. In that eerie silence, every rustle of leaves sent jolts through my body. It felt like being watched, an unseen gaze lingering just out of view. "Greg? Are you receiving?" I spoke again into the radio, but only static replied, a mocking reminder of my isolation from others who might help me decipher this twisted reality. As if answering my unspoken fears, a branch snapped nearby with a loud crack that echoed ominously through the fog-drenched air. My heart leaped into my throat as panic surged through me anew. I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was lurking just beyond reach. Fighting against rising dread, I pressed on toward John's lookout cabin in search of answers, or at least some semblance of reassurance amid this growing chaos. Each step carried weighty uncertainty. Doubts coiled tightly around my thoughts like vines choking out life from within. And there it was. The cabin came into view through shifting mists. Broken windows stared out blankly like vacant eyes observing a world they could no longer engage with. The door hung ajar, slightly swaying in an unseen breeze, and instinctively warned against entering alone. With trembling hands reaching for my flashlight tucked securely in my pocket, I flicked it on and illuminated the path ahead as shadows danced along crumbling walls inside, the darkness curling away like smoke before flame. But what awaited within those four walls remained unknown. A sudden rush of courage surged within me as curiosity propelled me forward despite lingering fears nipping at my heels. "John?" My voice came out steadier than anticipated as I called out into that cavernous space, waiting for some sign of life or acknowledgement, but only silence greeted me in return. Moving inside slowly, I scanned every corner. Floorboards creaked beneath my boots while dust motes floated aimlessly in beams of light filtering through broken panes above me, a haunting reminder that life once thrived here now faded beneath layers of neglect and decay. My breath caught when I noticed something glinting on a dusty table. It was John's radio. Relief washed over me momentarily until disquiet settled back in place when realization hit. If he had been here recently, where was he now? A chill danced down my spine again as dread settled heavily upon my shoulders once more. The weight of unanswered questions pressed relentlessly against me, each second stretched thin under scrutiny with paranoia creeping deeper like tendrils entwining around fragile branches threatening to snap entirely under pressure that came from knowing something sinister lurked nearby. Turning quickly toward where shadows pooled beneath half-fallen beams overhead, I sensed movement at the edge of sight, a fleeting glimpse that left nothing more than cold fear running rampant throughout every nerve ending within me. What awaited outside? Would it answer questions or shatter any last threads holding together sanity? "I need backup," I breathed shakily into the radio before summoning enough courage to step further inside, each heartbeat resonating loudly amid suffocating silence surrounding everything. The fog clung tightly outside still, waiting patiently for revelations waiting to unfold beyond mere imagination. The heavy steel door groaned in protest as I pushed it open, my breath catching in my throat at the sight before me. Inside the lookout tower lay a barricade of splintered wood, remnants of desperate attempts to fend off something unseen. A smashed radio lay on the floor, its shattered pieces glinting ominously in the dim light. Panic surged through me. This wasn't just a mess, it was chaos. I stepped inside, gripping my flashlight tightly as I flicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating overturned furniture and scattered debris. The sheer violence of it all sent a wave of nausea through me. This place had been home to someone who had been terrified, fighting for their life. My heart raced as I took another step forward, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. "John? Are you in here?" I yelled, desperation cracking my voice. Silence enveloped me like a thick fog, far more terrifying than any answer could have been. The air felt heavy within these walls, thick with an unspeakable tension, as if a scream had been trapped and compressed inside the lookout cab. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't turn back now. Not when I was so close to uncovering what had happened to John. A flicker of movement caught my eye near the window. My gaze shot towards it, and that's when I saw it, a pale handprint pressed against the outside of the glass, high above the ground. 6 fingers reached outwards. No way, for real, no way. It felt like ice water coursed through my veins as I stumbled backward, my mind racing with impossible thoughts. What kind of creature could do this? What had happened to John? I turned around slowly, scanning the room for any sign of him or whatever might still be lurking within these walls. My flashlight flickered erratically as if sensing danger nearby. The shadows danced mockingly around me, pushing against my resolve. As I made my way deeper into the tower's interior, every creak of wood underfoot echoed loudly in the oppressive silence, a reminder that time was running out and danger loomed large. My gut twisted painfully as memories flashed through my mind, John's laughter ringing in my ears like a distant melody now warped by fear. Suddenly, something crashed from behind me, a loud thud that resonated throughout the empty space. My heart leaped into my throat as I spun around, flashlight raised defensively against whatever might emerge from the darkness. "Who's there?" I called out fiercely, bravado masked an undercurrent of terror lacing each word. But only silence answered me once again, a mocking reminder that I stood alone in this broken sanctuary. I took a deep breath and pressed on toward what used to be John's workstation. Papers were strewn everywhere, maps torn apart like a child's drawing gone wrong, and I felt anger bubbling up alongside fear at this violation of his sanctuary. As I crouched down to examine them more closely, trying to piece together what had happened here, something caught my eye, blood smeared across one corner of a map depicting our territory. My stomach churned at that moment, dread coiled tighter around me like vines ready to suffocate any hope left within these walls. What had he encountered? What had forced him into such madness that he would abandon everything he knew? The radio crackled again, a sound so familiar yet laden with dread, and instinctively, I lunged for it on instinct alone. Maybe it would bring clarity amid chaos. "Greg? Can you hear me?" My voice trembled over the static as desperation clawed at me for answers. But again only static replied, cruelly mocking. I blinked back, tears forming in response to mounting panic and uncertainty swirling around like storm clouds threatening rain. Unable to stay still longer than necessary, I needed action. With newfound resolve propelling me forward despite fear threatening to paralyze every movement, I ventured deeper into what remained of John's world. Glancing up towards where those 6-fingered prints pressed against glass came from once more, the sight sent chills racing down my spine anew, suddenly feeling exposed beneath whatever unseen presence lurked beyond mere sight. What was out there? Was it waiting for me? Did it know about John? My heart thundered louder now than ever before as another noise echoed somewhere outside, a rustling sound that suggested movement beyond comprehension, but before I could process its meaning fully, I knew one thing: there was no turning back now. I stepped cautiously toward the window where those ghastly marks taunted reality itself, holding on to hope amidst despair while trembling hands reached out towards shadows gathering just beyond reach. But then, a chill ran through me as reality collided with imagination when suddenly two glowing eyes emerged from beneath layers upon layers of dense fog outside. They glowed eerily bright amidst encroaching darkness, and they stared directly back at me. In that moment everything froze, the world shifted around us both, a predator observing its prey while denying escape, trapping us between dimensions unknown. Every instinct screamed for flight while every heartbeat urged caution. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, only raw emotion ignited sparks within every synapse urging escape, but whether from fear or fascination, that moment transformed everything irrevocably. Finally understanding that whatever watched from just outside those grimy panes held secrets meant only for nightmares. And today would be etched forever upon memory's canvas. In that instant, the boundary between sanity and terror shattered irrevocably, revealing truths best left undiscovered but now forced into light. I blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights above me, their sterile brightness invading my senses like an unwelcome intruder. The room felt cold, the air thick with an antiseptic scent that reminded me of a hospital, of fear and helplessness. I could see a nurse's face hovering above me, her features a blur of concern, but I couldn't tell her what I had seen or what I had felt back there in the tower. My hands trembled as I recalled the cold terror of that handprint on the glass, 12 feet up, watching me sleep. The memory crashed over me like a wave, dragging me under its suffocating weight. They say I'm catatonic, that I broke, I thought, the words echoing in my mind like a silent scream trapped behind my eyes. The whispers from the past clawed at me relentlessly, it was as if the very walls held the truth of what had happened. I could still hear the disembodied voice whispering my mother's name, followed by Ashley's, each name piercing through the haze of my fractured thoughts. My heart raced as flashes of that night flooded back to me, shadows dancing just beyond reach, threatening to consume everything. I tried to focus on the room around me, the sterile white walls felt like a mockery of the forest I once loved. This was a different kind of prison, one that held tighter than any chains ever could. Desperation gnawed at me as I shifted uncomfortably on the narrow bed. How had it come to this? The lookout tower had been my refuge, a place where I sought redemption for Ashley's accident. The guilt hung over me like an executioner's shadow. At that moment, a faint sound pulled my attention. It was the beeping of machines keeping time with my faltering heartbeat. Each beep echoed in my ears like a reminder of how fragile life was and how close death lurked in every corner. My fingers tightened around the thin blanket draped over my legs, grounding me as memories surged once more, memories of climbing into that tower and gazing out into nothingness. I remembered those moments when loneliness settled deep within me like an unwelcome guest. Day after day passed in isolation until it became unbearable. Reality blurred with nightmares as shadows morphed into something sinister beneath the trees. Panic swelled again as I recalled how John had vanished without warning, not just from sight but from existence altogether. The nurse returned with a glass of water, her eyes searching mine for any sign of recognition or response. "You need to drink," she urged softly, her voice tinged with compassion. But how could anyone understand? How could they grasp the terror that haunted me? "I can't," my voice barely escaped from between parched lips, shaky and weak. "You don't understand what happened." A flood of emotion threatened to spill over as I relived each horrifying detail, the frantic search for John amidst whispers and shadows and how reality twisted itself into madness. She tilted her head slightly but didn't press further. Perhaps she sensed that probing would only deepen my wounds. Instead, she placed the glass down beside me before stepping away to give space for thoughts that spiraled through my mind like leaves caught in a whirlwind. In those brief moments alone again, panic danced along the edges of consciousness, taunting me with its whispers, "What if you never escape?" The thought seized hold and wouldn't let go. Every breath drew in dread as images from that night played out like film stuck on repeat, John's desperate face etched into memory alongside ashes and despair. I closed my eyes tightly against their relentless grip. Every eyelid flutter sent jolts through my body, a visceral reminder of being watched even now in this supposed sanctuary meant for healing. Shaking off those sensations took effort. Deep breaths were necessary yet insufficient against this mounting tide threatening to drown all sense. "Emily?" A new voice pierced through, familiar yet laced with unfamiliarity, and suddenly there he was. Michael stood framed in the doorway like some specter summoned from nightmares long forgotten. His expression mixed concern and disbelief as he stepped closer. "Michael," my voice cracked under pressure. Relief flooded over me at seeing him but quickly twisted into anxiety when his presence stirred dormant fears within. "What are you doing here?" "I came to check on you," he replied softly but firmly, his presence anchoring yet unnerving all at once, like waves crashing against fragile cliffs unable to withstand nature's fury any longer. "Did you find John?" My heart raced again. The question slipped out before thought grounded it, a plea hanging heavily between us with unsaid truths clawing at both our throats desperately wanting release. His silence said more than words ever could. Dread pooled within those moments lingering too long unanswered beneath sterile lights illuminating fears left unspoken while darkness wrapped around corners unseen ever deeper inside each remaining shadow still haunting every corner of memory unchecked somewhere far beyond our grasp now held captive by something darker than despair alone. "I wish," he began but stopped short, words trapped against his tongue amidst tension stretching taut between us until we both understood. There were things best left unvoiced. I jolted upright in the hospital bed, heart hammering as the familiar tap, tap, tap echoed through the room. The sound clawed at my memory, pulling me back to that final night in the tower. I could almost feel the chill of that moment creeping down my spine again. My eyes locked on the window, waiting for the shadow to manifest, knowing it was out there, watching me, even here on the third floor of this sterile building. The relentless thumping reverberated in my ears, and I felt an icy grip of dread settle over me. "Why are you afraid, John?" I heard it, the voice mimicking my own, then Ashley's, whispering inside my mind like some twisted echo of regret. The words seemed to dance through the air, mocking my deepest failures and injustices. "Why are you afraid?" The taunts wrapped around me tighter than any bandage or restraint ever could. As I struggled against the sheets that felt like shackles binding me to this place, a low hum began vibrating through the floor beneath me. It rose like a storm from deep within the building, distorting the air and making my teeth ache. Panic surged as I realized this wasn't just noise, it was something else. A presence that made reality shimmer and warp like heat rising from asphalt. I pushed myself up further, muscles trembling with exertion as I swung my legs over the side of the bed. My bare feet hit the cold linoleum floor, sending a shockwave of awareness through me. Adrenaline coursed through my veins. I had to escape this room before whatever lingered here consumed me whole. But as I stood unsteadily, I felt a wave of certainty wash over me, a knowing that something was on its way. That was when I noticed them, bolts on the window frame beginning to loosen without any visible hand at work. My breath caught in my throat as panic surged anew. This was just like before. They were dismantling my last refuge just as they had done with the tower door. My mind screamed about consequences while time stretched impossibly thin around me. "Help!" My voice emerged as a mere whisper, but it felt heavy with desperation as I looked around for anyone who might hear me, anyone who might still be in this world with me and not lost beyond reach in shadows waiting to pounce. But silence enveloped me again like a suffocating shroud. The hum intensified, vibrating through my bones until I feared they might shatter into dust if I stayed here any longer. The walls seemed to close in tighter than ever before. They were no longer just barriers but sentinels marking off boundaries for something far darker than fear itself. I staggered toward the door, each step feeling heavier than lead as dread clawed at my insides. Outside lay an unknown expanse. I remembered how vast and oppressive it had felt in that tower, but somehow this place felt worse because here there were supposed to be people who could help me escape this nightmare. As I reached for the doorknob, a sudden realization gripped me. What if they couldn't help? What if those people wore smiles hiding truths darker than shadows? That thought made my stomach churn. Uncertainty slithered up from deep within, a reminder of all those whispers trailing behind me since leaving that other world behind. With one last glance back at that window where shadows now danced menacingly against sterile light filtering in from above, I turned and flung open the door into an empty corridor stretching endlessly before me like a maze designed for torment. My heart raced faster now, the stakes had never been higher, and every instinct screamed for escape. I dashed down the hall toward a flickering light at its end. Hope flickered there amidst encroaching darkness, threatening to swallow everything whole once again. Each footfall echoed loudly against cold tiles beneath me, a reminder that even within supposed safety lies danger lurking nearby waiting patiently. Then came another tap, sharper this time, closer, as if mocking my resolve while urging hesitation. Fear coiled tightly around every fiber of my being, urging caution against reckless abandon forward into what awaited beyond those walls. Suddenly, all at once, the lights flickered violently before plunging everything into obscurity. The world dissolved into shadows swirling about, chaotically taking form yet refusing definition. No! I gasped out loud, feeling trapped within unseen binds pulling tighter, constricting breathing, pushing panic back toward full eruption once more. But something deeper stilled that rising tide momentarily, a voice breaking through chaos, calling clearly yet faintly echoing across distances far too great, "Emily, help." A plea woven with urgency tinged with despair drew back against memories swirling round, threatening grasp tightly tightening still even now. The sound sparked recognition buried beneath layers upon layers of what had been lost long ago. Ashley, was she calling for someone? Or perhaps it was merely another cruel trick played by whatever haunted these halls, now twisting reality beyond recognition, dragging everyone down deeper still toward inevitable doom waiting patiently just beyond reach? With renewed determination surging inside, I rushed forward, guided only by fading echoes growing louder with each desperate step taken. I would find her. Even if every breath threatened collapse against chilling dread threatening always lurking nearby, the promise remained bright, flickering ahead, guiding onward despite doubt lingering behind, pressing downward, urging retreat away from danger instead. But then came another jarring shift, a low rumble vibrating through walls, reverberating within lungs, gripping tight, pulling every ounce away, leaving nothing behind save dread, congealing thickly, stifling breath even further still. "Help!" I cried out again, my voice raw, straining desperately against unseen binds, struggling harder, fighting tooth and nail against darkened corners, looming quietly, watching silently beyond where light dared tread, still pressing forward nonetheless, determined, not letting go, refusing defeat no matter how steep odds stacked against hopes rising fleetingly yet ever closer, inching nearer, reaching beyond limits set years ago. I woke to the sound of persistent tapping, a haunting echo that pulled me from the depths of my restless sleep. The sterile hospital room felt suffocating, each breath weighed down by the oppressive air thick with dread. As I blinked away the remnants of slumber, I squinted through the bright light streaming in, and then I saw her, Emily, the park ranger, standing just outside my window. Her eyes were wide and searching, a flicker of understanding passing between us as if we shared an unspoken secret. My hand instinctively pressed against the cool glass, feeling an odd reverberation on the other side, a subtle rhythm that sent shivers racing down my spine. The tapping grew more insistent. It was as if something was trying to break through from beyond. I tried to call out, but words eluded me. Instead, our gazes locked, hers filled with empathy and concern, mine a reflection of terror and disbelief. "They say John is gone," I imagined her thinking, her expression shifting into one of quiet resolve. "He lost his mind," but I saw what I saw. It struck me how much clarity lay in her gaze even when my own thoughts felt scattered like leaves caught in a tempest. She understood, she had witnessed the same shadows that haunted me. With every beat of my heart, a sense of urgency washed over me as I recalled the way darkness had clung to me back at the lookout tower, the way it swallowed everything whole without mercy. Each tap resonated in my mind like a distant warning bell ringing out through dense fog. Something was wrong here too. The air around us felt charged with an unspoken dread that even the nurses scurrying past couldn't ignore. Their nervous glances betrayed their unease, a palpable chill permeating every corner of this place meant for healing. "I need to get out of here," I thought with fierce determination surging within me. My feet shifted nervously on the cold linoleum floor beneath me as if sensing that danger lurked not far from where I lay bedridden. I glanced back at Emily, her presence seemed solid against the chaos swirling inside my mind, a beacon amidst despair. I pushed myself off the bed, wobbly legs trembling beneath me as adrenaline coursed through my veins like wildfire igniting dormant instincts for survival. With every step toward Emily, another tap reverberated against glass, this time louder, as if whatever lingered outside demanded attention. "Help!" My voice escaped as little more than a whisper, though desperation flooded it nonetheless. Each syllable carried weight, heavy with fear woven into reality, threatening existence beyond those fragile walls closing in around us tighter than ever before. Then came another surge. The hum beneath my feet escalated once more, a low vibration tremoring through both floor and air alike, wrapping tightly around everything, threatening stifling breath, suffocating clarity, pushing panic upward, clawing at sanity just beyond reach. "Emily!" My plea echoed down corridors stretching infinitely into shadowy corners where light dared not tread. It felt futile yet necessary amidst turmoil swirling within like tempests raging wild, demanding release now before darkness closed in entirely upon us both. She turned abruptly toward me when hearing my voice break through barriers built up strong over countless moments never meant to be forgotten, yet lingering just out of grasp, forevermore waiting patiently for recognition, acknowledgement, perhaps even reconciliation restored once again before all fell apart, leaving nothing behind save echoes fading away, forgotten memories swept aside along paths walked so long ago, leading only deeper into unknown realms, haunted still by ghosts, untamed, running rampant, waiting, always watching, silently lingering, ever near. "Stay back," I warned sharply as she stepped closer, trying desperately to decipher what lurked behind every corner, peeking through barriers rising high, pushing down against hearts brimming full, ready, bursting open, spilling secrets hidden far too long, needing exposure, finally unveiled, laid bare under scrutiny, once faced head-on despite fears lurking nearby, always poised, ready, striking swift, biting deep, tearing flesh, revealing truths often left unsaid, spoken only whispered beneath breaths exchanged hurriedly. Wondering why words faltered while silence held sway instead. The tapping intensified again, a cacophony now merging into something darker than mere sound. It morphed into whispers intertwining among shadows, weaving tales spun from dread, twisting together until reality blurred beyond recognition, pulling apart threads binding sanity, holding firm against tide rising so swiftly, threatening dissolution, leaving nothing behind save echoes, haunting stillness, echoing endlessly throughout those halls, forever tied together. In that moment of clarity amid chaos, I saw it. Shadows creeping along walls dimmed by flickering lights overhead, casting doubt across fragile hopes, shimmering fleetingly ahead, filling spaces where certainty should have resided, instead replaced by uncertainty, crawling forth, stealing warmth, leaving only cold remnants behind, freezing time.